Om. Hariom, and greetings from Innisfil. Really, honestly, how many of you know where Innisfil is by show of hands? Whoa, okay. It's near Toronto. By show of hands, honestly, how many of you know where Toronto is? Ontario, Canada. So, every year, we go on two family vacations, one with my side of the family and one with Sheila's side of the family. So, right now, we're on the vacation with Sheila's side of the family, and we're in Innisfil. It's a very nature-esque city community. Today, while I was sitting on the water trampoline, I was just observing all of the elements, really. I saw Earth, the beautiful, mature trees and the soil. I saw the water, the clean water beneath me. Then fire was more in the form of the heat of the sun, the rays, the intensity. And then air, there was lots of wind as well, pushing the trampoline around. And space, I didn't think about too much. But at least these four elements, I was very, 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 very appreciative of that these four elements create such an experience for me. Now, when I came back to where I'm sitting right now and I was checking my email and also the news came up, and it was really disillusioning to hear, or at least for me to read, that almost 100 people have died in Texas because of flash flooding. And it's so easy for us to share that this was a accident. It was a freak accident, and so on. But for those who are analyzing more closely, maybe this happened because we put too much carbon in the air and too much concrete on the earth. That such flooding happened and such flooding couldn't be absorbed. And so this resulted in the deaths of so many in such a developed country. And this all makes me think about what our loving earth Sangha is about. It is about following the path of Shreya. Lots of people have names that are Shreya. Their kids' names are Shreya. But Shreya is sacrificing the short term to be dedicated to the long term. And that's what we do in this Sangha that is about loving our earth. We are engaged in Raja Yoga in the mornings, and we are engaged in Prithvi Yoga on the first Sunday of the month. Both are equivalent yogas in the sense that they're means to the ends. What is the ends? The ends is to be independently joyous. So far, in terms of Prithvi Yoga, we are using Raja Yoga, and thus far we have covered the first of the 8 limbs, which are non-harming, non-possessing, non-indulging, non-arrogating, and non-compromising. These are the yamas. Now, I'm just going to pause and focus on non-arrogating because I have forgotten, because I suffer from avidya, that our team was supposed to begin this workshop and then I was supposed to continue. But I'm such an arrogant person that I assume that I'm always supposed to begin, for which I ask for forgiveness. But now it's awkward if I stop and they start. So let's just go with the flow. And now we're getting into the niyamas. The, these are not the don'ts, but rather the do's. What we should be doing with our resources, time, and efforts. And we started off with shaucha. Shaucha in the big picture means purification, but to get to that is organization. And we had a great workshop about this last month. And now we're shifting into Svadhyaya. Svadhyaya, if I can define in one simple English word that is a verb, it would be understand. Naturally, this means to understand ourselves, but it means to understand, are our expectations of ourselves towards our earth enough? Because it's very easy for us to feel, I'm patting myself on the back, that I'm environmental enough. But the more I understand, in a self-criticism, self-forgiveness model, that I can do more, I can be more. And that's very much what we're going to explore this month in terms of plastic. I have this glasses case beside me that's made out of plastic, and I got this the week I left the ashram. So this would have been September of 2005. Now, if I were to get new glasses, it would still come in this plastic case, correct? But really, if I were engaged in Svadhyaya, then if I were the business owner, I should find an alternative. If I'm the consumer, then I don't want this glasses case. I'll find something different that I can protect my glasses in. So Svadhyaya, to understand that really our expectations of ourselves can be higher. With this, I understand that I've messed up the flow, for which I apologize. But it's one of those sorry, not sorries. And so I'm going to pause and let our team and our sharers continue.
Hariom, everyone. So before we get into tonight's workshop on plastics, we wanted to quickly spotlight something really special that launched earlier this week. You may have seen the poster or caught a glimpse of it on social media or heard Vivekji speak about it during Meaningful Mornings. It is our Efforts for All campaign. So many of you are familiar with our efforts campaigns at Chinmaya Mission Niagara, but for any of you that aren't, these initiatives encourage us to give in three ways: by giving our resources, our time, and our effort. O this year stands for animals, water, and earth, and we've tied each one of these focus areas to one of those three forms of giving. So I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing the campaign webpage with you now. So just bear with me for a couple of seconds as we get that set up. And then I will walk you through the first focused area, animals. So can everyone see the webpage right now? Great.
Yes.
Okay. So first up is giving resources, and we're directing those towards wildlife protection this year. We've partnered with an amazing organization called Wildlife SOS. They're based out of India, and they work with a range of species, including bears, leopards, and elephants. They're involved predominantly in rescue and rehabilitation, anti-poaching, human-wildlife conflict prevention, and habitat protection. For our campaign specifically, Chinmaya Niagara's donations will go toward their conservation work with elephants, which includes supporting biologists who track their movements, education officers who teach local communities how to live safely alongside them, and medical teams who help injured elephants return to the wild. And some of you may be aware, but there's been a lot of news recently on about elephants being killed or injured by trains in India. So this work is really timely and important. You can see here on our webpage that there's a link to our dedicated fundraising page. I will pull that up right now. Just give me one moment. Okay. So our goal is to donate $25,000 by September 1st. You can donate in USD or Canadian dollars. And just follow the instructions on the page. And please do check out the rest of their website as well. It's full of information about the wonderful work that they do. So you can learn more there, and we'll drop that link into the chat as well. And now I will hand over to Aditya to talk about water.
All right. Hariom, everyone. Good evening. Am I audible? Okay. Our second effort is focused on giving our time by cleaning up a local waterway. So this can be a stream or a lake or a pond or anything like that. And essentially, it's a nearby body of water that is obviously tied into larger water systems. And you might be wondering how you can do this. It sounds difficult or complex. It need not be. Essentially, you begin by choosing a site that is close to you or that you know or you think can use some care. You would plan a time that works for you and your peers or friends or family, whoever wants to do it with you. Gather some basic supplies like gloves, trash bag, bucket, and some friends. And once you're out there, you spend some time collecting trash. Obviously, you need to be mindful of sharp objects like knives or blades or whatever, or needles. And even if you spend just 30 minutes doing this, it can obviously make a difference and add value to the body of water. So the next thing is the tracking piece here. So you can log your cleanup hours using the tracking form. So you see the website that Yaishna is sharing, it says track here. So on there, let's say 3 people do it for 1 hour. So that's a total of 3 hours of effort. But if more than one person in your group is part of the campaign, make sure you count for all of those hours that are being shared. But make sure only one person does it, so it's not being double counted. And then on the Instagram page, we'll be posting tips and tricks and resources on how you can plan a safe and a meaningful cleanup. So make sure you keep track of our Instagram page. And then I'll pass it to Rupali to talk about Earth.
Thank you, Aditya, for the walkthrough. Hariom, everyone. So the next form of giving we are focusing on is effort. And here it means fasting. So just once a week in a way that's meaningful and manageable for you. It could be just skipping one meal, giving up processed food, or maybe just let go of indulgences like sugar, junk food, or going without solid food entirely. It is totally up to you. Be mindful and do listen to your body type and go slow. We encourage you to fast on Thursdays. Each Thursday, we fast together as a community, choosing to slow down, reflect, and care for our Mother Earth. Through this practice, we can be intentional and we can reconnect with ourselves and deepen our relationship with the earth. Lastly, as Aditya mentioned, you can track your fast each week on the same campaign form. And now over to you, Yashna, to wrap things up. Thank you.
So if you're feeling inspired to take part, and I really hope that you are, you can just go to this campaign landing page and click register now at the top right here. And you'll just fill out a quick form to just let us know that you're joining the effort. We'll drop the link to the campaign page and the registration form directly right in the chat now, so you can easily find them. And if you have any questions at all, we're also sharing our Loving Earth team email address in the chat, so feel free to reach out. And as you go through the next couple of months, please return to this page each week to log your progress, how many hours you've cleaned or whether you've fasted. And you can also visit the Padlet, which is linked down here at the bottom of the page. Just to read reflections from others. You can see the photos of cleanups that have been shared, and also just add your thoughts about your experience. It's a space to stay inspired and see how we're all moving together. And as Aditya mentioned, we'll also be sharing tips and tools on our Instagram and on WhatsApp throughout the summer to help you plan your waterway cleanups and provide guidance on fasts. So please keep an eye out on those. And just as a final thought, you don't have to do everything. You can just pick one, or you can try them all. But just whatever you choose, it's really about the thoughtfulness and the care behind it. That's what really counts. So we're so excited to walk this path together with you. And with that, we can shift back to our workshops on plastics, and I'll hand it over to Seema.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to quickly share my presentation, but firstly, I want to thank everybody for being here today, especially on the holiday weekend. Very inspired by seeing how many people are online today. Can everybody see my screen? Great. So first, I just wanted to share a brief background about myself. In 2019, I started a grassroots environmental group called Go Green Vernon Hills in Lincolnshire. And really, this initiative came about because as I was volunteering in our school lunchroom, I observed a lot of waste, especially food waste and single-use plastic waste. And therefore, I decided that, we had the absence of an environmental community within our town, and we needed a place where we could create environmental awareness as well as bring sustainable solutions to the community. So our small but mighty group since then has brought about several changes. We have brought a composting program to the schools within our school district. We've also worked with the village to bring about a residential food scrap pickup program for the residents in the community, as well as we were able to convince the village to move their fleet, a couple of their vehicles, to electric vehicles, as well as make additional changes in terms of renewable energy. I'm also on the steering committee for the Coalition for Plastic Reduction. This is a statewide coalition of 48 plus organizations that are working on policy solutions to address single-use plastics in the state of Illinois. I'm also on the advisory committee. I'm also an advisory committee member for the Illinois Statewide Recycling Needs Assessment. This is a body that has come together to provide policy recommendations to the Illinois legislature on how to manage paper and packaging waste in the state of Illinois. So when a lot of us think about plastics, the image that probably comes to mind is landfills as well as oceans that are overburdened by plastic waste. But it's important to understand that plastics is not just a waste issue. The production and the toxic chemicals that are associated with plastics, they exacerbate climate change. They have a huge impact on biodiversity, and they have a very distinct impact on human health. In fact, the Center for International Environmental Law has stated that plastics are a public health problem hiding in plain sight. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is the case. So plastics are made from fossil fuels, which are oil and gas. And then chemicals are added during the manufacturing process to give plastics their properties. And it's important to understand a little bit about these additives. These additives can make up anywhere between 30 to 50% of the plastics. And what they do is, for example, maybe some of you have heard about BPA. This is a chemical that makes plastic harder. Phthalates is another chemical that makes plastic softer and more flexible. And a lot of these chemicals are found in consumer products such as food packaging, children's toys. They're found even in cookware, etc. Now, researchers very recently identified that there are over 16,000 chemicals that are used or found in plastics today. Less than 6% of these 16,000 chemicals are regulated internationally, and about 4,200 of these chemicals are considered hazardous. So when they say hazardous, they mean that these chemicals persist in the environment, they bioaccumulate in organisms within our bodies, and they are toxic to human health as well as the health of the environment. What's also particularly disturbing about this study is that there are over 10,000 chemicals that researchers do not have enough data about on whether these chemicals are hazardous or not. And this is because of the lack of transparency from the plastic manufacturers. So why is all of this a problem? Well, one of the reasons is that plastics are not inert. This means that the chemicals that are added to plastics, they are not bonded to the plastic material, so they can very easily leach and contaminate our environment as well as our bodies. According to IPEN, toxic chemicals in plastics are among the most harmful chemicals in the world. And I'll go a little bit further to explain one of I guess in a lot of opinion, one of the severe impacts of some of these chemicals. So phthalates, bisphenol A, PFAS, some of the flame retardants, these are endocrine disrupting chemicals. So what that means is they mimic the hormones within our body, and they can throw our hormonal balance off. And so these endocrine disrupting chemicals are associated with early puberty in girls, with infertility, obesity, and diabetes. They're also linked to neurodevelopmental effects. In fact, scientists and researchers from a group called Project Tender have said that they're deeply concerned about the mounting evidence that the toxic chemicals in plastics are contributing to neurodevelopmental disabilities like ADHD, autism, as well as learning disabilities in young children. Just earlier this year, another study came out where 200 chemicals have been linked to breast cancer that are found in food packaging. Out of these 200 chemicals, 143 of them are found in plastic food packaging. So there is enough scientific evidence, there is enough research that the chemicals in plastics are having a detrimental impact to our health. In fact, there are studies to show that these chemicals are costing us billions of dollars. And it's very important to remember that this cost is not borne by the manufacturers of these chemicals and by the manufacturers of plastics. So what do we know about microplastics? So the organisms, the microorganisms that are able to break down a banana peel or able to break down a cardboard box in the environment, these microorganisms are not able to break down plastics, and that's because the chemical bonds in a plastic don't occur naturally, and therefore in the environment, plastic, when it's subject to the natural elements like heat or wind, the plastic does not biodegrade, but it breaks up into tiny pieces, which are called microplastics. These are less than 5 millimeters in size, and then they can further break down into nanoplastics, and nanoplastics are not visible by the naked eye, and these can actually even penetrate cells and tissues. Now, microplastics, scientists have found microplastics almost any place that they have looked within the human body. They have been found in the human placenta, both on the mother side as well as the fetal side. Microplastics have been found deep in the lungs. They've been found in the brain, the blood, and the list just goes on. What some of the early research is showing is that the concentration of microplastics is increasing in the human body over time. So at the University of Brazil, scientists looked at 30 placentas that were donated between 2006 and 2021. And they found in 2006, they found 6 out of 10 placentas that were contaminated with microplastics. And by 2021, 10 out of the 10 placentas were contaminated with microplastics, and the size of the microplastics had also increased. Earlier this year, researchers at the University of Mexico found microplastics in the human brain, and they found that the concentrations had increased by 50% in just 8 years. What is also very disturbing about this study is that people that were diagnosed with dementia, they had 10 times more microplastics in their brains than patients that did not have microplastics. So one of the things that came out from this study is that the most common microplastic that was detected was polyethylene, which is widely used for packaging containers as well as plastic bottles and cups. So I think one of the things that's important to understand is plastics has widely been represented to everyone as a waste issue. And when it's presented as a waste issue, the solutions have been directed more towards how do you manage plastics at the end of life cycle. So the solutions have been more about how do we recycle better? How do we as individual consumers change our behavior? But none of these will address the scale of the plastic crisis. And that's because one, unfortunately, the recycling of plastics has been an abysmal failure. To date, only 9% of global plastic waste has been recycled. And there are several issues with plastics recycling that I want to touch on quickly. First, it's extremely difficult to sort and almost economically unfeasible to recycle the many different types of plastics that have different chemicals and dyes. Secondly, this is important to understand. I think a lot of people don't know this, but most plastics, when they're recycled, they're actually downcycled into a lower quality product. So for example, a plastic water bottle, in most cases will not become a plastic water bottle again. It will become polyester fiber that's used in clothing or in carpeting. And eventually then that plastics is landfilled. Thirdly, and this is important for our discussion today, according to a Greenpeace report, because plastics are inert, they not just release chemicals into the environment, but they also absorb toxic chemicals in the environment. So when plastics are recycled, the recycled plastic results in a toxic cocktail that that plastics is then unfit for food grade packaging. So what ends up happening is that type of plastic ultimately gets downcycled or landfilled. And then the last thing is we are starting to hear a lot from the industry about chemical recycling as the new form of recycling that will fix the waste crisis. Unfortunately, this type of recycling is much more worse than the environment than virgin plastic production. Secondly, consumer behavior, changing consumer behavior, while very important, is probably not enough. Today, plastics are found everywhere. They're found in our clothes, in carpets, in building materials as plastic lumber. In fact, they're found in products that we would not suspect. Some tea bags are made of polyester that can leach billions of microplastics in just one cup of tea. So unfortunately, while consumers like us would like to make individual changes and to be able to make a difference to the plastic crisis, and we do not have enough choices. The producers are responsible for packaging decisions, and even if choices are available to us, they're usually cost prohibitive. So what are the solutions? I think we need to look at upstream to stop the production of single-use plastics in order to make a systemic change to the plastic problem. So there are a lot of national and international groups that are working on the solutions to the plastic crisis. And the framework that they've put forward is, firstly, let's try to ban the most problematic of single-use plastics. So when we say problematic, we mean these are those types of plastics that are hard to recycle. They end up as litter in the environment, or they are toxic to the human health and as well as the health of the environment. There are 11 states that in the United States that have banned polystyrene foam foodware containers, or what we call styrofoam. These are very difficult to recycle, and they have a toxic chemical called styrene in their products. Single-use plastic bags are often found as one of the top items in beach cleanups. There are 12 states in the US that have banned plastic bags, and there are over 500 cities that have some types of restrictions on plastic bags. There are also other policies that could be used to reduce single-use plastics. For example, there are some cities in the US and some countries that require restaurants to have reusable plates, cups, silverware for customers that dine on site. There are other laws which are called accessories on request or skip the stuff type of laws, which require restaurants to ask customers whether they would require a plastic utensil or straw or condiment packets before giving them these accessories on a takeout order. And there are about 56 skip the stuff type of laws that have been enacted here in the US. Then there are policies that are on a much larger scale, which are called extended producer responsibility types of policies. And what these do is they shift the financial burden of paper and packaging waste away from consumers and away from cities and onto the producers of packaging. So the producers of packaging now are responsible to finance the collection as well as the recycling of packaging waste. And some of these laws have strong targets in them or strong designs where they require the producers to reduce the amount of single-use packaging. For example, in California, the EPR law requires single-use plastic packaging reduction by 25%. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about, in states where it's hard to pass policy, what else can we do as advocates? So there are some non-policy types of solutions. We're seeing places that are shifting to safe non-plastic reusables. So for example, Brown Avenue Elementary School in Rhode Island was able to cut their waste by 90% by moving to stainless steel reusable trays. This was amazing because they went from 9 50-gallon trash bags to 1/3 of a trash bag. Can you imagine? The amount of work that is also cut down for the custodians in terms of trying to manage all of this waste on a daily basis. And the school estimates that there's about maybe 3,500 yearly savings from moving to reusables. So reusables can be implemented anywhere food is served. So it can be done in schools, it can be done at a community event, local restaurant, mandirs, workplace, soup kitchens, block parties. Any place that food is served, there is a way to move to reusables. Other policy solutions, non-policy solutions are trying to make our restaurants and cafes more sustainable. There are national Bring Your Own campaigns here in the US. And what this does is it encourages customers to bring their own clean cups and containers for drinks and leftovers. Restaurants and cafes, they put visible signage that let customers know that their containers would be accepted. There are also reuse service providers popping up throughout the country. In fact, we have a few here in Chicago. And what they do is they provide a system for restaurants to allow customers to check out reusable cups or reusable takeout containers for their drinks or their food. A customer pays a deposit for these reusable containers, and that deposit is returned when the container is brought back. This is amazing because you see some of the cafes here that have reusable stainless steel cups that customers can check out. So, we've been here before. I think maybe some of you remember in the 1980s when every country in the world agreed to phase out the ozone depleting chemicals that had caused a hole in the ozone layer. Today, 99% of these ozone depleting chemicals have been phased out, and it's estimated that would save about 2 million people from getting skin cancer. Last month, a study came out that in states and communities that have plastic bag legislation, up to 40%, 47%, those communities see up to 47% less plastic bag litter in their communities. So the point here that I'm trying to make is that while the plastic crisis may seem overwhelming, this is something that we can solve. This has been done before. There are laws in some of those states that we have seen are making an impact in terms of the plastic crisis. So what can you do? I think we all can be ambassadors of change. Today we have here 3 different ways in which you can make change within your community or make change within your state. So the first one is to join a local environmental group to try to bring plastic solutions within your community. I think joining an environmental group is great because these groups have experience on how to work on sustainable initiatives, and therefore the learning curve is not steep. This is a place where you can join teams as well and leverage the strength of teams in order to bring changes. So when we wanted to start a composting program within our schools, we reached out to environmental groups within our state to see how they had achieved this, and we learned a lot from them. So what we'd ask you to do today, if you're interested in something like this, is search online for an environmental group or a League of Women Voters or a Sierra Club chapter in your community. If you're not able to find one today, you can always inquire from your library or from your city and village staff, from your local garden club, if such a group exists in your community. We'd like you to identify a plastic solution you'd like to work on when you join such environmental group and why you'd like to work on it. And then most importantly, we want you to pen down a date when you would contact this group. And what I would say for each one of these solutions that we're putting forward, that we would like you to be persistent and consistent. And I found that those are the two things that have worked for us in terms of achieving what we have achieved within our community. So when you join a local environmental group, make sure that you attend the monthly meetings or as many meetings as you can. The second thing maybe that you might be interested is trying to shift to safe, non-plastic reusables. And here, I would suggest is identify a location where you or someone you know has an influence, whether it's in your school or whether it's at a local restaurant or your workplace. The reason I was able to bring about a composting program within our school district was because I was a parent at that school and I got other parents involved. So it always helps to have someone. The next thing we'd like you to do is identify a few people who you can work with in order to bring about this change. Again, I cannot stress about how important it is to have a team to leverage the strength and the ideas of the team. We'd like you to also pen down a date on when you'll contact others to join you and when you'll contact the location to initiate conversation. Again, start monthly meetings with your team. Make sure that you have an agenda for your meetings and that you are persistent and consistent. And finally, the last one is try to influence plastic policy in your state. So here's what I'll say to you. You probably, after this presentation, know a lot more about plastics and the health impacts from plastics more than your legislators do. So I would not feel any type of fear in contacting your state senator and your state representative to ask them about what are they doing, to tell them about what your concerns are, firstly about plastics, and then secondly, what are they doing to solve the plastic crisis. We'd like you to pen down a date when you would contact your state senator and representative. And then I would highly recommend to probably get a meeting. It's great to have a phone call, but also if you could get a meeting and get other advocates to join you at that meeting, I think that there's always strength in numbers. When you have more people at a table having a conversation with the legislator, it helps to bring about change. We in our community tried to get our congressional representative to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act at the federal level. And we just got different members from the community to form a team and reach out to a congressional representative. So again, be persistent and consistent, set up follow-up meetings with your legislator and keep that relationship going. Contact them maybe a few times a year and be on top of the issue. The last thing is we have resources available in the appendix of this presentation on policy ideas as well as toolkits to help you with this process, and that will be shared after the workshop with everybody. So you have about 10 minutes right now to work on any one of these three objectives. And I'm going to stop and do a time check. Okay. Do we have 10 minutes, Rita ji?
Yeah, I think we need to give some time for questions. So maybe a little less than 10 minutes. And Rani ji, you have a question?
Hello. Thank you so much for this presentation. So I think one of the things I've noticed that at our Achievement Center here, for at least I've been going there for 14 years. They've been trying the initiative to ask people to bring their reusable containers for prasad on Balvihar days. And they even at one point gave free reusable containers. And then every year, at the beginning of the year, they sell reusable containers for like $5. In spite of that, I noticed that I would say at least 85% of the people don't bring containers. So they use, all this plastic or paper or whatever. So what is something that we can and I'm a Balvihar teacher, so that's really not my area, but I would like to bring some change in our center. So can you give some ideas of what and there is another Meena is also from our center. So what can we do to bring a change this coming school year?
So I would say that one of the things that I've seen work is getting students involved. So I think if you are able to, I'm not sure if you're already doing this, but in some of your Balvihar sessions, if you're able to educate the students and maybe have them be the voice of change. Because I think when you have them understand why this is an issue, I'm sure they would go home and express that to their parents and ask them or remind them to bring their reusable containers when they come to Bihar next time. Or that could be a homework that they have, for the first month or so, that they should bring their reusable container when they come, for the subsequent weeks, and maybe it might become a habit. But I've seen always getting young students involved always helps about in bringing the change. I just put into the chat a link on how to find your state legislator. This is a local one that one of our organizations uses here. And I believe it's pretty up to date, but you can also find a different website if you search online for what's within your own state.
Hari Om. This is a very good presentation, Seemaji. So the question I have is, it seems like the use of plastics is intimately tied with our consumerism, right? Where we need more and more stuff, and to make more and more stuff available to us, plastics is a good way of getting more and more stuff to us, right? The food that we eat, or the clothes we buy, or whatever it might be, or toys, and everything has packaging. And I saw that you're talking about packaging companies, maybe they should do, not do single-use plastics, but it's more consumerism, right? I mean, it's like we want more stuff, and then there are companies that make us want more stuff, and that's the cycle that continues this whole thing. So without that, I mean, everything else seems a bit too little, right? Not enough.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think some of the things that we have discussed within our own leadership team is that the cost to a lot of the environmental issues uh, is going beyond our means, is, as you said, over consumerism. And that is the root cause of the problem. And so we do, for example, when we talk about, especially in schools, when we talk about the issue of food waste, when we talk about the issue of single-use plastics, one of the first things that we teach our students is that we need you to reduce before composting. We need you to reduce before recycling. because, for example, if you look at the issue of food waste, there are 100 solutions to the global warming problem. Reducing food waste is number 3 out of those 100 solutions. So I completely agree with you that reduction is important, but with the plastic crisis, we are at this point right now where plastics has infiltrated our bodies. And so, we really need systemic change in order to make any impact to the plastic crisis. So unfortunately, at this point, changing consumer behavior is a slower process. I think Vidya has a question. Can someone unmute her?
That was just probably me. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? You can put your hand up virtually, or if you would just want to put your hand up physically, it can unmute you as well. Okay, we do have a hand up. Let's see.
Hari Om. Thank you so much, Seema, for this presentation. I just wanted to ask you something. Like lately, we've been hearing that when we put, say, like plastics in the dishwasher, like does that also leach out the micros? And are we supposed to do that or not?
Yes, absolutely. Well, no, you're not supposed to do that, but you're right. Absolutely. There is a study that has come out that when plastics are subjected to high heat, there's a release of chemicals as well as release of microplastics when plastics are put within the dishwasher. So they start to degrade slowly and slowly when they're put within the dishwasher, and they're releasing both chemicals as well as microplastics. So I would highly recommend not using single-use plastics to store food and to heat your food in.
And the other question I had is, now we have this festival season coming up, and all the local Indian sweet stores, like the mithai places, they come up with these very, ornate boxes for putting the mithai, and they sell that. And I mean, the hundreds of boxes are being sold, and I don't think they are even recyclable because of the material that they are made out of, and it's just so wasteful. Now, how would we even try to approach these mithai shops and ask them to change? Because like you said earlier, consumers could take their own containers, like we could take a steel box or whatever glass container to the store, and they could weigh it, and then they could put the mithai in there. But it's a big challenge to educate the customers as well as the people who are selling the mithais.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, here is where we just need policy change, right? I do, for example, when I go to get bagels here from Einstein Bagels, I take my stainless steel dabba with me and I tell them to put the bagels in there. But I'm one out of maybe all of their customers that do that. So it's tough. I think if you have a location where you have connections, where you have a friendship, where you know someone, I think then starting that conversation maybe and figuring out how you can take small steps to get there would be helpful. So for example, within our schools, while we were able to get composting started in the schools, we haven't been able to get reusable foodware or plates within the schools. But what we were able to do was we were able to stop plastic water bottles from being offered at every meal by requiring students to bring their reusable water bottles to the lunchroom and we installed refillable water stations in the lunchroom. We stopped providing condiment packets, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's always small steps that can be taken to eventually get there. But it always starts with a conversation. Prior to myself starting my grassroots environmental group, I was just a stay-at-home mom for several years. And it was one conversation with the principal that started this journey and has taken me to where I am today. And the reason I bring that up today is that to let you know that a lot is possible. We just have to get started, work in teams and just keep at it to eventually get to a point. I'll stop at that.
Thank you.
Someone in the chat had mentioned that they have Beyond Plastics local groups within, I believe, their state. And in fact, that's how I got started with a lot of the plastics work, is I audited a college class on plastics that was offered by Judith Enck. She was the regional EPA administrator under President Obama, and she is the person that leads Beyond Plastics. So I learned from her. I learned from the class about the issues about plastics and then the real solutions. And then Beyond Plastics provided me with the tools and resources that I needed in order to have conversations with legislators, in order to understand what types of policy decisions or policies are needed to make effective change. So there are different groups like that within the appendix. Today, I've listed Beyond Plastics, Just Zero, Upstream Solutions, which is an amazing group that has different working groups that help communities move towards reusable foodware and other reusables.
Thank you, Seema. We've already reached our hour. So I would, if you're still available, Seema, I might ask you to just stay in case there are some Q&A. We'll just do a few announcements and then revert back if anyone else has questions. So thank you so much. There's always so much to talk about with plastics, and hopefully one day we won't have to. So just wanted to reiterate at the beginning of the workshop, the team had shared about efforts for AWE. And one component that I think we can continue to do is have that conversation. We have the link there in the chat, but also if you're not already part of our WhatsApp group, that'll also be a great way for us to stay connected, especially during these 2 months, for the efforts for AWE to share where, if people are local, living together, like living in the same area, they can connect on doing a cleanup, etc. And then another announcement is this was released on Earth Day, is the registration for our Loving Earth retreat. You can find that link to register on our website. The retreat is being held in Boston, and it's from November 7th to the 9th. So for anyone who would like to have more of these conversations, for us to connect individually in person, that's always very, very impactful. We invite you to register. And with that, I will conclude. And then for anyone that'd like to stay on, please do. How are you? Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you, everyone.